Welcome to a sort of soft opening of our garden vlog for this season. Seems like I'm moving slower than ever this year for some reason. Just not able to move as fast as I used to. Of course, I've had aches and pains and stuff since I was like 30. Then you hit 40 and now closer to 50 is like, dude, you just like hits you really hard, or it hit me really hard. I'm not really having any more like aches and pains than I did last year or the year before, but my body is just moving at a much slower pace. I kind of thought that we'd be making some kind of big reveal or something this season, in the opening of this season. And, things really don't happen that way, Things, kind of layer slowly together. Or, I guess it could lower, you could get a bunch of news if you do a ton of things. If you spend a whole lot of time, a whole lot of money, a whole lot of work, just constantly focusing on those big experiments, projects, or whatever. But, I've been more focusing, I guess, on family stuff, Well, we're probably not going to actually do any digging in the ground in this video. Again, this is kind of a soft opening. We'll probably be in a soft opening for a while until I get a new phone or camera lens or something on my phone. And I really don't have the extra money. I need to spend it, the little bit extra that I have to do what you can generally only do in this time of year, with the plants. Going from last season to this season, we've had failures, we've had successes, and we have had failures that seemed like they were successes until something just happened to a few of the graphs and stuff, and they just dwindled down. And I'm not going to get too much into that, because I think this season we probably need to focus in general on like one topic or a couple topics for each video that we release. I've been working very slowly very slowly on doing a few more post mycorrhizal beds, making from the ground up mycorrhizal raised beds, the aged wood chip alternative beds that we've been working on for a couple seasons now. I've tried, and I continue to try to experiment with more grafting, doing it at a much higher level. Whether or not I succeed or fail, and if you remember how we ended last season, we were having so much issues between that summer drought last year to even, whenever we cut it off. Then we had so many frosts and freezes between the end of last year and the beginning of this year into maybe the early part of spring, and we were trying to propagate quite a bit of stuff to give to the community and stuff like that. And we did have a lot of things that died, that just did not like coming inside and getting all the water zapped out of them, from the heaters, fans, and air conditioners and stuff. Even though in many cases we were taking plants out within 24, 42, 72 hours, and they just don't like that. A lot of plants just can't take the inside lack of humidity. During last season's garden vlog, we really were talking about, expanding the pawpaw experiments with like the Duckworth, the Eric Duckworth cultivars, and a couple other cultivars that we had access to. But, I'll talk about this and a couple other things in this video. just with a little bit of Google searches, Reddits, and message threads, the various different fruit forms and all, I found people that kind of knew Eric Duckworth, or was family members or friends or associated or traded with the guy or tried his fruits. And it seems like there's a general consensus that his cultivars did not taste very good at all. He produced fruit. He was very, I don't know if you'd call it stingy with his fruit. They said if you tried his fruit, the cultivars, I don't, whether they're 2 or 4 or 5, it's like Duckworth 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or whatever, that he would not let you leave with the seeds of that fruit, which is very strange to me. His fruit came from Louisiana wild pawpaws, which is different than what most people would get their, pawpaws from, Appalachia or Ohio, places like that, maybe Pennsylvania, Tennessee, probably almost half of the eastern U.S. is where most people get their wild pawpaws, or where most of them are probably enter like breeding programs from. And the other cultivar that is supposed to have a really big pawpaw that has nothing to do with Duckworth, I think it's called Prima. That was one that I was going to access, and all the reviews, videos, and everything that I've seen about that pawpaw says it's the most bland, non-pawpaw tasting pawpaw there is. A big fruit, yeah, that's fine, but it seems like there is nothing special about it other than its size. Between those two things, I've decided sort of to just hold off on getting those. I mean, there are some in Gainesville, Florida, that I potentially have access to as well, that I just decided not to move on yet. I've made a couple pawpaw videos, including the one where my oldest Tennessee seedling pawpaw died to the ground, at about 26 years of age. And even one of my grafted cultivars, I don't know if it's a Peterson pawpaw or what, because I lost the label on like at least three of the ones that I bought as grafted plants. And I know it's one of the 3, but I don't know which one is which. Just at like 10, 12 years of having it, is producing one single flower bud. We also have to remember that every time you buy a grafted pawpaw and that grafted pawpaw survives, it has 2 genetically different plants on it. Has that top scion wood graft, that everything above the root line, that is this improved cultivar, or so-called improved cultivar, and then a rootstock. And it seems if your pawpaw does good, okay, at least, it should eventually flower. Not guaranteed south of the Florida Panhandle to do well. My mango does not flower very often. Had 2 flowers this year, 1 or 2 last year. Then there was like 2 or 3 years where we didn't get flowers, and it could be that we just do not have the chill hours to make them happy, or it may be too much shade. Maybe if we have it in the sun a little bit, that it'll do better, but I really don't know yet. I sort of came to the conclusion that you need, when you're this far south, to let root suckers form. Let that give your tree a lifeline in case your main tree dies. That lifeline will allow you to graft improved cultivars, and it'll allow you to keep your genetics alive, or at least the root system alive, even if you don't want to graft it. Maybe that seedling will turn into something good, or maybe it'll be just for pollination purposes. So I've sort of recently came to the conclusion that I want suckers to form more readily, and I want to back up my grafted cultivars, all of them, even if they haven't done well, like the mango. I want to put that mango scion onto a sunnier rootstock that may be more vigorous. See if it does better in more sun. I want to back up sunflower, NC1, everything else, including that Tennessee seedling that had the little avocado like fruits on it, including my Florida Panhandle seedling. So with that said, doing the backup of all of those things is taking a lot of the rootstock, this year and possibly next year too. And I'm only trying to graft, I think, 3 varieties that I didn't already have. And I guess moving on, we kind of talked about putting fig trees and stuff like that in areas where we probably wouldn't have normally planted anything. Maybe where we were originally planning to, use vehicles to drive through, little driveway areas way in the back of the swamp or whatever. We're probably no longer going to be bringing in dirt, hauling dirt or anything from those areas. So we can start from the back. And I'm definitely wanting, a lot of fig cultivars. But the problem is I don't know which ones are nematode resistant. So I want to create these like mycorrhizal beds, raised beds, to minimize nematode, damage. Of course, we could use Celeste figs or something to graft, everything to, which has some nematode resistance to them. But building those mycorrhizal raised beds, it'll limit the immediate competition of root dense areas. Plus, some of the flooding that happens in way back. So, mycorrhizal raised beds already give you some protection from bacterial root rot anyway. So you get like a good start plus some protections from the mycorrhizal beds. Now, I don't know what we're going to focus on in a big way this season. There's going to be a lot of things that we focus on a little bit, but what's going to be the biggest focus? Is it going to be 1 or 2, 3 things? We definitely want to focus a little bit on loquats, focus a little bit on Jabota cavas, a little bit on some experimental stuff that we're not going to talk about yet. Definitely figs, probably more mulberries, and definitely at least a little bit, if not a lot, on avocados. So one thing I am unsure about is, bananas and banana circles. We built like that half circle last season, even though, it was only like 3 or 4 days to dig that thing out and then burn it and add all kinds of stuff to it. But it really seems like, because I have such little time and resources, that I don't know if we're going to work on another banana circle this season, or maybe in the end of this season, or somewhere in between the end and the next season, if we have a next season, on our garden vlog here. Anyway, there are definitely a few things that I know we're going to be working on, experimenting with, that I just don't want to say yet, because I want it to kind of come as a surprise to everyone and focus on those topics when they come up. You'll see it when it happens. I guess I'll just end this here talking about, grafting is an amazing thing to learn. And I've talked about this. I think I dedicated, last year sometime, something to that, talking about it. And the reason I bring it up is one of my local nurseries, because they haven't been able to get their plant stock in the last couple years very well. Persimmons and peaches and everything, and people come in constantly, ask them, do you have this, do you have that, can you get this? And they're constantly telling their customers, no, I don't have it, maybe 6 weeks from now, or no, I can't get it, my suppliers don't have any left. You know, I heard from a different nursery that said deer ate all their American persimmon stock up. I don't know if that was a bunch of baloney and or what. Maybe they didn't propagate enough or had too many graft failures. But our local nursery told me, or let's just correct myself. They were selling a lot of plants, fruit trees for $30, you know, for small ones, like 3-gallon size. And sometimes they were only 2 and 3 foot tall. And they had been pretty much one of the cheapest nursery suppliers or whatever around for so long. And they kept creeping up their prices. The cost of shipping, the cost to ship their plants and stuff were going up. And they were actually having to contract with other nurseries so they would bulk order just so that the shipment cost per item would go down. So, you know, when they got their shipments in, you'd see like flooding, like 5-6 nurseries just flood the nursery and grabbing and getting hundreds of plants that, you know, their normal customers probably didn't even have access to. So I guess they got tired of, you know, having to raise their costs, not have the supplies in, the plants in that people wanted, and people probably complaining about the costs, saying, well, I can go here and here and here and get this plant for, you know, why do I need to go way out here in this rural area 20 or 30 miles out of my way to buy plants from you? And they started getting seeds, bulk seeds, cold stratifoam in the refrigerator, you know, grow them out a year or two, whatever, get scion wood. And they learned how to graft and at least graft better. So they're doing persimmons, plums, nectarines, peaches, probably a myriad of other things. And they're selling a lot of them now for $20 a piece, instead of 30 or 40 or whatever. So for about 5 cents a piece, he said, I get my plum, my and peach or whatever, Nimagard seeds, and within 2 years or so, I got a plant that's in like a 3-gallon container, grafted, and I sell for $20. And it only takes up that amount of space. You know, of course, you got to hold on to them for 2 to 3 years to get them to get big enough to graft, and for the scion wood, the graft to grow a little bit, get, you know, 3 foot or more. But it's almost all profit, you know. What do they have, $1 or $2 in the pot, soil and everything, and then, you know, 17, 18 plus dollar profit? And when I was at that nursery just 2 days ago, a day or two ago, buying some stuff, some fruit trees, and everybody else was grabbing the same peaches and nectarines and this and that. You know, almost everybody walked out with some sort of stone fruit tree. Well, that's it for this little soft opening episode, and, you know, even later episodes until we get our bearings straight, till we get the camera replaced or fixed. It might be a while until we get all that going and we're doing a video every other day or every day. Just consider this like a slow, soft opening to our vlog. Take care, guys.